Let me know if this has ever happened to you. You teach your students a skill or you go over some material. They go through an entire unit with assignments, study guides, and assessments, and even after making good grades on everything, the students act like they've forgotten everything you taught them. Did they really even come to school on those days?
But we're working really hard. You're not working hard enough. I need results.
I know I experienced this with teaching grammar. Students who have been taught nouns for 10 years come into my class and suddenly act like they've never heard of a noun before. They see verbs as some kind of weird concept that may or may not exist. Pronouns are just professional nouns, right? And prepositions, that's a lot of syllables for that word. So what is it? Why is it that students can learn so many concepts over so many years, have it repeated to them over so many years, and then suddenly act like that it's not there, like they don't know it, like they've forgotten it? What's missing there? This is because students are often missing a crucial part of the learning process: reflection. I want to talk to you today about 6 ways you can incorporate reflection into your classroom, and you can actually incorporate all 6 ways all at once with station work. Reflection is a great way to get students thinking about what they thought when they were doing an assignment. You want reflection to really access their thinking process and their thinking skills as they were completing something. You don't want reflection to just be a rehash of what they did. You want them to really get into metacognition. One thing we have to ask is, what is reflection? Is it a static genre where they're just writing a letter to themselves or to the teacher explaining all the decisions that they made? Is reflection writing about how they felt or discussing what they felt about an assignment? Is it a combination of the two? Reflection is actually not a static genre. It has dynamics to it, and there's a lot of diverse ideas you can use for implementing reflection into your classroom. A lot of times when I've given reflection assignments, I've just given them a writing prompt that asks them to go over their decision making throughout an assignment, like say for an essay. And oftentimes what I get back is just a really weak, short, paragraph or 2 that just kind of, it lists what they did, and they kind of go over the process we went through in the classroom of completing the essay. They might talk about that they liked the assignment. They might say something like, oh, I struggled with writing, or they might say, I don't like writing, or they might say something like that. So I've really given a lot of thought to how we can improve reflection so that it's more meaningful for the student and so that they can hang on to the concepts and the material that they just learned. So in thinking about these 6 ways, I wanted to think about how I can get students, number 1, being active with it. I don't want them to be static. I don't want them to be stuck in a desk for 30 minutes. I don't want them to be just writing or just typing something. I wanted students to see reflection as even a dialectical process. In fact, Catherine Yancey describes reflection as needing a dialogue, and that it needs multiple perspectives in order to produce insight. I think this is because our memories are not infallible, that they are vulnerable to our minds twisting things up and misremembering things. We're actually very prone to misremembering things, and so I think getting multiple people involved helps us understand accurately what we experienced and what we learned, and really help drive it home. Okay, so the 6 ways that I like to implement reflection into my classroom. I like to do this with stations. I like to do this all at once. Sometimes I'll break them up and I might have them focus on one to get a little bit more substance to them. But a lot of times I'll do all 6 of these stations because I think getting the well-rounded approach with the stations and getting them moving, number 1, keeps it a little more entertaining for them, and it starts to really get their brains thinking in different ways about the assignment or what it is that they learned. And obviously these stations will be, they'll start them at different spot. So the order here is not really that important. But the first station that I set up is the one that really focuses on metacognition. What I do is I give the students an organizer that says I saw, I thought, and I wondered. And I want the students to avoid writing too much in this organizer. I'd like for them to actually doodle or draw something or do a bullet point list or something that's a little bit less intensive when it comes to writing, so that they're not worried so much about formalizing what it is they're saying, that they're just kind of getting back into that mode of thinking about something. When you see something, it's a glimpse, right? If I see something, if I look at something in nature, I see it, I might hold that image for a couple of seconds, but then I move on. I have to really intentionally look at something if I want to gaze at it for a long period of time. So I don't want them to sit there and describe what they saw for a couple of minutes. I want them to just get that glimpse in there, because I want their brains to kind of recreate that feeling and that experience of what it was they were doing. So if it's an assignment like an essay, they might have seen a book. They might have seen a research article. They might have seen their computer. They might have seen the person they were doing peer review with. Whatever that image is that comes to mind, I want them to just jot that down. When it comes to what they thought, I want them to just think basically, what did they think? How were they thinking? What were they thinking when they were completing the assignment or when they were learning the skill? And then from there, what kind of curiosity got sparked? Like when we were doing an essay, were they getting curious about maybe a different perspective? Were they thinking about their grade? Were they worried about if their writing made sense? Like what were they wondering about as we were doing the assignment? And I really think this organizer is a good way of activating that metacognition and does a really good service to the students getting to reflect on how they were thinking when they were working through an assignment. The second station that I set up is more of an open discussion concept. I want this one to be really friendly and to really bring in that dialogue that Catherine Yancey spoke of. I have some couches in my room, so I'll set up a couch talk station, kind of like a coffee shop. We have a coffee table and some couches, and it's really, I'll give some guided questions, but really I just want them to speak openly about the assignment. I just want them to have a conversation. I wish I had more description here for what it is they're talking about, but I do want it to be student-led. I want the students to drive the conversation and get some meaning out of listening to each other about their experiences with the assignment. The third station that I use is a post-write. This is more of your typical reflection exercise where they're given a prompt. I like to give something specific and let them write about it. We have Chromebooks in my classroom, and so the students will, this will be one that they can turn in or that they'll have in their Google Drive or something like that. So this is the writing portion of the reflection, something that you would see more in a traditional reflection exercise. It might be a letter or it might be a paragraph. It can't be too long because these stations are pretty short. I like to set these stations up to be about 8 minutes each. So the prompt can't really be too long because they don't have a lot of time to write, but they can get about 3 to 5 sentences is what I ask for. And this is where they can really focus in on formalizing their thoughts and getting it down into sentences. So the fourth station is where I want students to start thinking divergently about the reflection. I have them work on an anchor chart on these big post-it posters that we have. And I'll have them, I'll specify something about the assignment. Maybe it's the challenges you faced when completing an essay. Maybe it's the toughest key terms that we had in a novel. So it's just some sort of aspect of the assignment or the unit or the concept or whatever it is we're doing. And I have each group write down, I might say 3 entries per group member, and they have to put it on the anchor chart. And where this gets really fun and really challenging, and the students actually really do get into this, is you tell them they can't repeat any of them. And so the first group or 2 has it pretty easy because they're the first ones putting up there. But you get to group 3, group 4, group 5. I sometimes have 6 groups, maybe even 7 groups, depending on how many kids I have in that class. And by the end, they're like, I can't remember anything else for this. Or I can't think of any other words that I'm going to put here. So it becomes a really good challenge. It's a bit higher level thinking. It gets them thinking divergently because they are having to really expand and change up the way that they're looking at the assignment. And by extending their thoughts here, I think it really opens up some new ways of thinking about the assignment that they can hang on to when they're going forward. The fifth station is probably the most difficult one that we do. It comes across as the easiest because it's the drawing station. I have a little bar area in my classroom, which is where I allow students to stand sometimes. And I'll set up some drawing paper or some construction paper and some colored pencils and some markers. And I'll tell the students that I want them to, the question's always the same. What did this assignment or whatever it is you're doing, what did this mean to you? Got kids waving at me. And the question is always the same. It's always like, what did this particular assignment mean to you? Like, what did this theme mean to you? And I want them to illustrate that in an abstract way. We go over symbolism a lot in my classroom. And so I really push them to think abstractly about the assignment or about the concept or whatever it is that we're doing, and to create a symbol that represents what that assignment meant to them. This really gets into some higher level thinking. A lot of the students need help with this, and you want to push them to not just like recreate the physical object of the assignment. So you don't want them to, like for an essay, draw a piece of paper with an A+ and some like squiggly lines to symbolize the writing that they did. You want them to think really on a deeper level about how they can represent a concrete thing in an abstract way. Maybe they can focus on the emotion of it. Maybe they can focus on the application of the learning, but really push them to think abstractly about it. And I think this really goes a long way in helping them internalize the concept and the skill and carry it forward. The last station that I set up is for the students students to think outside of the assignment, right? They're reflecting throughout these stations backward, right? Here's what we did. Here's what it meant to me. Here are the struggles I had. Here's the process I used. Here's what I was thinking. And then with this last station, I like for them to think outwardly. Okay, how are they going to apply it? How is it going to connect to something else? And how can they use all that information to think about how they're going to synthesize it with maybe other subjects or maybe a future lesson? And so what I like to do here is set up a video on the Chromebooks with headphones where they can come to this station and watch a particular video that will connect almost in a vague way, but have a connection to what it is that we were working on. The students like this because, you know, they all like to watch videos. They love YouTube. And so you pull up a video for them and they get to get into this own little world, right? They're in, everybody else is having conversations. There's some noise going on. They get to put on the headphones and then they just get like sucked into this video. And then afterwards, it's usually a short video, or 3 to 5 minutes at the most. Afterwards, I have some guiding questions for the group to have a conversation about the video so they can reflect on how their learning of that previous assignment can connect to the video that they just watched. And the conversations are really great because you can see them really applying what they learned previously to something that we're going to do in the future. So I really like this station for helping them think ahead about what it is that they just learned. So those are the 6 ways that I incorporate reflection into my classroom. I hope you got something out of it. And if you've got some cool ideas on reflection in your classroom, please drop me a comment and let me know. I'd love to learn from you and learn some new ideas as well. Hit subscribe and check in again soon. We'll have some more videos coming up in the future.